Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. Today we're reviewing a monitor that has received a ton of requests throughout our comments section and on social media. So many that, thanks to the help of our Patreon members, we just went out and bought one. It's the Xiaomi Mi Curved Gaming Monitor 34. It's a little unclear to me what the official name is, but it is the new ultra-wide display from Xiaomi. This is the first monitor we've reviewed from Xiaomi, and they're a relatively new entrant to the monitor market. I think this is one of their first monitors overall. In any case, in typical Xiaomi fashion, they're jumping right into the market with a strong value proposition for the specs. The Mi Curve 34 is a 3440 by 1440 ultra-wide display with a 144Hz refresh rate, but a typical price tag of below $450 US. Depending on your region, you might even be able to find it cheaper than that when converted to your local currency. I bought mine on sale for less than 600 Aussie dollars, which is a lot less than similar products here. Xiaomi appear to be using the same 1500R curved VA panel from Samsung that's also found in several other mid-range monitors we've tested recently, like the AOC CU34G2X and the Nixius NX EDG34S. And all the usual features seem to be here, like adaptive sync support and a wide color gamut, although there's no HDR functionality. You can't even turn on HDR on Windows, which is a good thing actually, as there's no local dimming here, so really no HDR support. What I was surprisingly impressed with is the overall build quality for such an affordable monitor. The Mi Curved 34 is a great looking display with a minimalist, consistent use of plastic. It's not that super cheap crappy plastic either. It has a nice finish, and especially from the rear looks really good. No RGB elements, no gamer garbage, just a simple, elegant design approach that looks built with care. There's even some clever touches like the magnetic port cover, which is far easier to work with than the usual plastic clips. We get decent adjustability here too, with height, tilt and swivel support. The mechanism isn't the smoothest, but the stand overall is very sturdy, and for an ultra-wide, it doesn't take up an enormous amount of desk space due to the thin legs. Ports include 2 HDMI 2.0 and 2 DisplayPort 1.4, which is decent. Unfortunately, Xiaomi haven't gotten the message about directional controls for the OSD, so with the buttons on the right, it can be a little tricky to navigate through their settings. However, it's a pretty bare bones list of features, mostly around color controls. You won't find stuff like cheat crosshairs here, although there is picture-in-picture functionality. What I was most interested to see going into this review is how a first-time monitor company would handle the overdrive settings, because it's the most important aspect to performance and can be hard to get right. Xiaomi are offering 3 overdrive modes plus overdrive disabled, so let's explore what they are doing here. The off mode is nothing special, revealing native panel performance of 10.91 milliseconds at 144Hz, clearly too slow for this refresh rate. The low mode is not much of an improvement either. We do get an 8.7 millisecond gray to gray average, but that's still not what we need for 144Hz. Luckily, what Xiaomi offers using the medium mode is decent. Here we get a 6.71 millisecond gray to gray average, with only a small amount of overshoot present. This delivers a borderline 144Hz experience, with 74% of transitions fast enough to keep up with the 144Hz refresh rate within a reasonable tolerance. This is good enough that there is an appreciable difference in motion clarity over 120Hz and lower refresh rates, but not the best we've ever seen. Unfortunately, dark level smearing is present with this monitor. The worst offending transitions can be as slow as 24 milliseconds, which is a moderate to bad result. Overall, the dark level average is 12 milliseconds, and we'll see how that compares to other VAs shortly, but this isn't a Samsung Odyssey G7 where the overdrive is tweaked to eliminate dark level smearing. It's part of this monitor, like with many VAs. The high mode is not a great choice for 144Hz due to high levels of overshoot, which means we do see bright trailing behind moving objects often while gaming. And even then, we still see some dark level smearing, so overall this mode at the maximum refresh rate is a bit of a fail. The medium mode is decent for adaptive sync gaming, holding solid performance throughout the refresh range. In particular, as we move down to say 100Hz, there is no increase to overshoot, which is great to see as it can be an unsightly issue with lower refresh rates on other monitors. However, response times do take a hit. We're now getting just an 8.26 millisecond average, down from 6.71 milliseconds at 144Hz, and this continues to drop as we move to even lower refresh rates, eventually settling into a 10.21 millisecond average at 60Hz. As no refresh rate has unsightly artifacts from high overshoot, and response times are good enough to prevent most smearing at each refresh rate, this is the mode that I'd use for adaptive sync gaming, as it's basically a set and forget situation, as you don't need to change modes to avoid issues. With that said, at lower refresh rates you can gain more performance using the high mode. While this mode is totally unsuited to high refresh rates like 144 and 120Hz, at 100Hz we see pretty good performance in the 7ms range, and at 60Hz we get an 8.96ms average, which is improved somewhat from the 10.21ms with the medium mode. So that's just something to keep in mind if you think you'll be primarily gaming at 100Hz or lower with this display. Time to compare the Xiaomi Mi Curve 34 to other monitors on the market. In this chart we're looking at the maximum performance on offer at the highest refresh rate and best overdrive mode for that refresh. The Mi Curve 34 delivers respectable performance, but definitely in the mid-range category, delivering response times similar to the NX EDG34S and a bit better than the CU34G2X, which both use similar VA panels. However, many higher-end options are notably faster. The LG 34GK950F, for example, with its IPS panel is 36% quicker at 144Hz, and other IPS options like the 34GN850 are better again. The best VA panels are also superior, like the MSI MPG341CQR, but these are more expensive options as well. Dark level smearing is mid-tier for a VA display. You can get worse like with the Kogan Ultrawide we tested, but it's also possible to achieve better results. The experience will be pretty similar between most of these VA options though, including the AOC and Nixius alternatives. The only way to avoid dark level smearing with the 21.9 Ultrawide right now is to opt for an IPS panel and pay the price premium. We also see that at 144Hz the Xiaomi Mi Curve 34 has middling response time compliance at around the 70% mark, but again, this isn't significantly different from other mid-range ultrawide monitors that it's competing with. Next up, we have average performance across the entire refresh range, so this is the chart to look at for variable refresh rate gaming, as opposed to previous charts that focused on the maximum performance the display has to offer. This is where we start to see clear separation between the three mid-range 3440x1440, 144Hz options we've tested. While the Xiaomi Mi Curve 34 is similar in how it performs to the CU34G2X across the refresh range, the Nixius NX EDG34S is superior, with a 27% better response time average. This is due to the EDG34S's great handling of lower refresh rates. We get a consistent 6ms experience there with manageable overshoot. The Mi Curved 34 falls further away from the EDG34S as refresh rates decrease. While some of this performance can be recovered at lower refresh rates by switching the overdrive mode to high, the Nixius monitor is still faster overall for 60Hz gaming. Nixius has actually done a pretty good job here of handling this VA display, while Xiaomi is a bit below average. Input lag is fine with less than 1ms of processing delay. We aren't quite hitting a sub 10ms total delay due to slower response times, but it's not a terrible result. As for power consumption, the Mi Curved is a mid-table monitor that's roughly as efficient as the NX EDG34S. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if both displays use the same combination of display panel and backlight. Xiaomi also offers a backlight strobing mode in the OST called Motion Response Time. Unfortunately, it's not a great implementation as it's not assisted by the slow response times of VA panels. We get noticeable double images here and the usual pitfalls of strobing, like the inability to use it with adaptive sync simultaneously, so this is a mode that I'd avoid using. Moving on to color performance now, and the Xiaomi Mi Curve 34, like other monitors that use Samsung VA panels, is a wide gamut display. However, we are only getting 88% P3 coverage, so it's not the widest gamut going around, but this isn't any different to competing VAs. If you want more than 90% coverage, currently you'll need to be looking at an IPS panel. Out-of-the-box grayscale performance is a little better than the average gaming monitor. While there's no significant tint to the display's grayscale colors, this monitor doesn't stick to the sRGB gamma curve particularly well, so there are some issues with Delta E performance, particularly with darker colors. With that said, it's not a bad experience out of the box. Colors are oversaturated by default as we get a wide color gamut with no sRGB clamp. The oversaturation isn't too bad here with the Delta E2000 below 2.0, but as we move into color checker, we are a little shy of accurate numbers. For reference, we want Delta E performance to sit below 2.0 for a monitor to produce near accurate performance, so the Mi Curve 34 is a little higher than that. Unfortunately, not much can be improved through the OSD settings. There are some color controls, but they lack the fine-grained sensitivity of other monitors, so often when you make a change that's even just a single notch on the scale, it alters the color performance significantly. Given the out-of-the-box colors aren't terrible, I'd stick to just full calibration work here. When calibrated, we do get strong performance, especially for sRGB content with no oversaturation in apps that support ICC profiles. P3 performance is a little weak at the top end as we don't have full coverage at that gamut, but still, this should be fine for most non-creative work. ICC profiles we create are available for our Patreon members. Brightness is advertised at 300 nits, but I saw more like 390 nits in practice, so that's pretty good for most indoor use and will likely be too bright. Minimum brightness is around 60 nits for those people that like to run their displays with low brightness levels. The contrast ratio is very good at 3800 to 1 after calibration. That's above what I saw with the NX-EDG34S and CU34G2X, which were more around the 2800 to 1 mark. While dark level smearing is an issue with this monitor, there is no doubt that you are getting deeper than IPS blacks, which is what some people will be after. Viewing angles are average, but it is a curved monitor, so that's to be expected. As for uniformity, this is probably the worst aspect to my Mi Curve 34 retail unit. I did not receive a uniform display, which is obvious when viewing the panel. There are some areas that are noticeably brighter than other areas, and especially for dark grey content, there is some blotchiness. You can see high delta E's relative to the center for the left side of my unit. That's not a great result. The AOC CU34G2X has better uniformity, and the Nixius NX-EDG34S is much better. The Xiaomi Mi Curve 34 is a pretty great monitor for one of Xiaomi's first entries into the market. It doesn't have the biggest feature list or the highest performance, but as a value contender, it does a lot of things pretty well and comes with a great build quality relative to other monitors around its price. Performance-wise, it sits right about where you'd expect for a mid-range ultra-wide monitor that is offering these specs at a price below its competitors. Performance is okay and certainly competitive with similar products, but it lacks the top-end speed and polish that you'd get from a higher-end display. It does give you a decent single-mode variable refresh experience with borderline true 144Hz performance, but it's let down by dark level smearing and slow response times at lower refreshes. Often when a company makes a first-time product, they can really screw up things like overdrive, but I was pleasantly surprised by what they are offering. It is a VA panel, so I was never expecting the absolute fastest speeds, get an LG 34G and 850 for that, but a low overshoot experience is pretty decent. Default color performance is fine as aspects like brightness, contrast and viewing angles. The major downside here is uniformity, which was poor with my unit. It's hard to say if that's a unit specific issue or representative of all Xiaomi ultrawides, but it's something to be cautious of. When you look at the price tag, particularly in places like Australia, I think the value on offer here is too good to ignore, even if it's not a complete package. It's pretty similar to the AOC CU34G2X in most areas, if not better, at a lower price point, and the CU34G2X is already one of the best value ultrawides on the market. I'd personally choose the Xiaomi over the AOC model if the Xiaomi is easy for you to buy in your region. However, there's also plenty of reason to buy a more expensive monitor with these specs. The Nixius NX-EDG34S is better in both response times and areas like uniformity, but it has a higher price tag of $550. Whether it's a better buy will depend on your budget and how cheap you can find the Xiaomi. Then of course above that we get into the high-end monitors like LG's IPS range, which are much better as you'd expect, particularly the 34G and 850, but I don't imagine that people that are interested in this budget Xiaomi monitor necessarily have the budget to spend on those better IPS monitors. Anyway, that's it for our review of the Xiaomi Mi Curved Gaming Monitor 34-inch. Bit of a strange name there, but yeah, overall quite a decent value product, and one that I expect will continue to get quite a lot of sales if it can maintain the low price that it's currently being offered for. If you're interested in supporting our display testing and helping us buy more monitors like this to test, then you can support us through our Patreon page. Links are in the description below. You'll also get access to our ICC profiles that we generate through the calibration process, our Discord chat if you ever want to ask us questions, and of course other stuff like monthly live streams. Subscribe for more monitor content as well, and I'll catch you in the next one.